Jack Thatcher walked into school early. Now, living alone was not something he'd recommend, but it sure was easy to get out of the house with only one person using the shower and kitchen. He floated up the steps, turned right to go to his classroom, when he was pulled back by a voice echoing down the hall. "Mr. Thatcher, don't forget your inbox!" Jack turned around and went back to the receptionist's office. "Thanks, Terry. I think you're going to need to remind me for a few more weeks. I'm thinking so much about classes that my brain is already in social studies, and school hasn't even started yet." He looked in his box. It was empty except for a handwritten note reading, "Elizabeth asked me to work with your class yesterday, and I completely forgot. Do you have any time free today? Just send me a text. Joy." Now that was enough to add an extra bounce in his step. Everyone said she worked wonders with the students. After yesterday, he could take a few wonders. When he got to the classroom, Jack had to rummage around a bit. The staff directory had to be here somewhere. It wasn't in any of his drawers or on the desk. He launched into an expanding search, then realized her door was almost across the hall. He should forgo the wonders of technology and just use his feet. She was in her room changing out the lunch schedules and weekly bulletins. "Hi, Jack. Since I'm not here at the beginning of the week, Tuesdays are my Mondays. Let me just finish and I'll be right with you. How about I meet you in your room, because the students are about to be released from the cafeteria?" A few minutes later, she came into the classroom, greeted by several, "Good morning, Mrs. Verities." "Good morning, friends." Going back to his desk, she said, "Thanks for waiting. Sorry about yesterday. How did you make out on your first day?" "Well, I made it out alive, but only just. I don't think I've ever been as tired as I was last night." "I really understand. As a fellow refugee from the corporate world, it's a huge change. I thought P&G was hard, then I got into education. It will reveal whole new levels of exhaustion, but I wouldn't be any place else. So, what would you like me to do today?" Jack looked around the room, from the students at their tables to the books he hadn't read on the shelves. Back to Joy. "I know so little. I don't even know what to ask for. Everyone says you're the best, so could you just come up with something?" "Of course. I'll bring a little bit of everything. When would you like me to stop by?" "In your first free moment and stay the rest of the day, please." "I like the way you think. How about I come by right after the pledge and announcements? I'll have the students teach you what I do. Most of them have been here since kindergarten, so they know the program better than I do. And by the way, if the class is getting out of hand and you need me, just send the instigator to come get me. A walk usually does as much good as my work in the classroom. A body needs to move." With that, she was gone. When Joy saw Jack's messenger run today's attendance and lunch count to the office, she began to walk across the hall. It had taken her 2 years to talk the teachers into sending students out on these errands. Yes, the computers were faster, but the students loved to do it. Knocking on the door, she waited. Through the door, she heard Jack ask Anna to open the door. Any sense of control she could give him would be helpful. She stepped inside the door and waited. "Class, I'm sure most of you know Miss Verity. She's here to teach us about the reset room." "Good morning, class. When Mr. Thatcher and I talked this morning, I was thinking, how am I going to teach Mr. Thatcher what we do in the reset room? How can I make this work? There are so many things to say. Then I realized I was walking into a class full of experts, so I thought, why not get them to do the teaching? Are you ready?" The classroom was filled with bobbing heads and students saying yes. From the back of the room, she heard Aiden groan. "Do we have to go back to the beginning again?" Tyler muttered, "Let's play with the balls instead." The beginning is a good place. Without it, how can you have a middle and an end? She turned to Jack and continued, "I always start with the same thing. Pace. It gets us all up and moving and helps our brains work together. The first thing is to have a sip of water. Since it's the beginning of the day and you all had a good breakfast, we'll skip that step. Then comes brain buttons. The students all put one hand on their belly buttons and rub their upper chests. Why don't you do it too, Mr. Thatcher? It might make your day easier. Now we cross-crawl. It looked like chaos was breaking out, but she knew better. They all began to move in different variations. Some were touching opposite hands to knees, some were touching opposite hands to feet in the front, and some were reaching behind. Clearly, they had practiced last year. It was so gratifying. Time for hookups. She had to change that name. The junior high students just couldn't stop giggling when she said it. Maybe Pretzel would describe standing with ankles crossed and hands on opposite shoulders. Time for that later. 3 deep belly breaths and let go. Seats, please. Why do we have the reset room? Please remember to raise your hands. Hannah. To make happy brains, she said. And why do we want our brain happy, Hannah? This was well practiced. Hannah was across the hall often enough for it to have become a game between the two of them. When she met Hannah 4 years ago, the kindergartner was always angry and in trouble. She still got in trouble, but maybe wasn't quite so angry. There was nothing wrong with wishful thinking, because happy brains think. Thank you. Okay, so the reset room is to make your brain happy, so it can think. I have a special bag, my traveling classroom, so I can make any room into a reset room. The most important thing in my bag is something you can't see. I'll give you a hint. One of them is painted on the wall. Hands raised around the room. Tyler, what do you think I brought that you can't see? Mrs. Joy's rules. Your walls say you are perfect. And that is a perfect answer. Tyler was also a frequent flyer, though his visits had dropped down when they figured out that he usually skipped breakfast. She'd have to tell Jack that if he started to misbehave, to send him to the office with a note. Terry knew to feed him a few crackers while she fiddled about with things and sent him back to class. You should learn more rules later this year. Show Mr. Thatcher what your brain looks like. The students made their hands into fists, with thumbs extended, and then pressed the hands together. Good. So your brain has 2 sides. How do they talk to one another? Andrew. They walk across the bridge. Right, and that bridge is the corpus callosum. Grabbing a marker, she walked to the whiteboard. What exercises can we do to help the ideas walk across the bridge? Go ahead and call out answers. On the board, she wrote lazy 8s, thinking caps, hookups, cross crawl, ball of physics, space buttons, earth buttons. Okay, we only have a little more time. Who wants to demonstrate and explain lazy 8s? Michaela came up to the board and drew an infinity symbol, tracing it over and over. Why do we make lazy 8s to wake up our brain? Because it has 2 sides that I draw. It is even across the middle. Good job. When you draw a lazy 8, your hand and eyes cross the midline. Looking at Jack, she said, This is good for when we are taking tests or learning new things. Go on back to your table, Michaela. Class, thanks for your attention, and remember, a body needs to move. So move in the right ways and ask permission first.